Yeah. Happy Tuesday, folks. Lau Kozloff, Senior Sport Engineering Manager in Vancouver, British Columbia. This is the Metrics Analysis Working Group, Work Group. One of these days I'm gonna look it up. First item on our agenda is the status on persistent link items. Ilya, do you want to take us through those?
Yes, thank you for that. Let me open it up. Let me share my screen. Right. So as we mentioned before, LNR is doing really nicely. 97% FRT this week, 100% NLT, and 90, well, NLT is also climbing up, so beautiful work. Thank you, everybody there. I'm sure these figures for the month of September are gonna look much nicer. And asset was always fairly high. For self-managed, last couple of weeks, we had a bit of an incline for FRT, but I mean, we are running 3 experiments parallel, so it's possible it's affected by that somehow. Kind of stable on NLT. And in general for SAS, let's look at the last few weeks. We are kind of rising up a little bit last week, and this week also is not one of the lowest, not one of the highest, but we should expect to see some impact changes, at least in EMEA, soon enough. Nothing out of that.
Great, thanks for that. Next section is our hypotheses. I have the first one. Number one was ticket volume is too high for the team to consistently achieve FRT. Ilya and I went through this yesterday, and we have now closed it out. So I'll take you through that. Let me just share my screen. So we asked the team some anecdotal questions, got some data, but where we kind of ended up was like purely theoretical. Let's just take a look at the total number of tickets per engineer, and our headcount that grows. And assuming that, I mean, there is an assumption there. Like we've always met, for the past 12 months, we've met our goals for self-managed. LNR needed some work, .com needed some work. But you can see our tickets per engineer is actually lower today than it was a year ago, and even during some of the heavier times. So I think we've been hiring at the right rate. Like it's pretty, October last year was pretty bad, which makes me scared for this October. But yeah, fairly flat. I think I have low confidence that the team can't handle the number of tickets that we have in the queues. I think it's just about arranging work. So that has, I haven't created the issues yet, but that has created some follow-up investigations that Ilya and I want to do. Specifically, we want to look at the idea that GitLab.com tickets have gotten harder. Anecdotally, that seems to be the case, especially now that we've split out the account-related problems and the non-account-related problems, and also pared down 2FA and a lot of the other free tickets. We think the overall, like over the past 12 months, tickets have gotten harder. We're also curious at taking a look at work outside of Zendesk impacting contributions. So if you look 12 months ago, the number of internal issues we had was very different than what we have today. But there's also like MRs to docs and MRs to product, things like that, that we're not taking into account in the overall workload. So we want to take a look there and see sort of how those contributions are balanced. And we're also interested in, and I think this actually ties into an existing hypothesis already, but the regional position and number of engineers working on .com tickets not matching the pattern of like SLA tickets being opened. So essentially people are in the wrong region, which I think is we're already taking a look at somewhere else. Any questions, comments, thoughts on that one?
Just to add that it seems that .com SaaS is doing better than .com General. So that's kind of another observation worth looking into in regards to the difficulty of the tickets.
You mean account
The
related?
.com account related is doing better in FRT and NRT persistently, and the .com General one is dropping persistently.
Yeah. Thanks.
Do we have a specific way to measure difficulty that we feel good about?
We came up with an idea. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking for Eleanor, that's also something that we had to think about to sort of figure out, are there things that we can, well, Tom Atkins and I were just chatting about, maybe are there things that we can start people with that aren't as difficult, and then moving them as they get comfortable moving to more difficult tickets. But then it does become the question of how do you measure what's difficult and what's not. So I'd just be interested to know what we think about it. I think Tom and I we just sort of looked at how long it takes on average to investigate and close out a ticket that's specific to a certain topic, and sort of went with that as a preliminary thought.
We had a long discussion about it yesterday. One of the challenges in working based on time to resolve, full-time resolution, any ticket timers, is that we have many different automations that kind of interact together with the ticket length. So we can eliminate some of them from our calculations, but then you come to the question whether any specific number actually represents difficulty. So the idea that we came up with, we'll see how that goes, is to present perhaps a field, which is of course subjective, which would be filled in during the ticket or at the end of the ticket, which would be a subjective feeling of how the ticket felt like for you, kind of a level of subjective difficulty. We would have to monitor it over time, create a baseline, see how it affects different things. But from that, in regards to your question, we can maybe deduce after a certain amount of time, this problem type typically gets this amount of difficulty. So most people mark, I don't know, upgrades as hard. Then maybe for newcomers, we might not give them a problem type, which subjectively receives a lot of high marks in that regard. So that's a possibility we were thinking on.
The other thing that might unlock is we could see, like, if an individual is consistently rating tickets hard, like more than, say, the average, then it's just a sign where it's like, okay, this person actually needs a bit more training, and we can do that. Or in aggregate, if the team is rating many tickets hard, then yeah, like Lelia said, with the problem type, we can break that down a little bit and be like, okay, everybody's having a problem with NuGet tickets, which are really hot on .com right now. Let's do some enablement on NuGet, and we can talk to PMs. We can talk to we can get people to like help solve that problem, or even assign a couple of specific engineers where it's like, you be the expert, be the escalation point, and then help the team get better. It does add toil to the tickets though, where you have to fill out another field. So any more on that? Janik, if you've already given this a thought, I definitely want to hear more about what you've thought about and discarded, so we don't have to go down the same path.
Well, no, I love the idea that it's subjective and that it's ticket focused. Like you're on a ticket and you're thinking, oh, this is taking so long. Like I had a pairing today, and we literally spent the entire pairing on one ticket, which to me is just like, that's weird. Like, why are we spending an hour on a ticket? And so that I would say that's hard because it took all our time. Yes, we got to the answer, but like we want less of that. We want to make that easier. So I love that. I think when we thought through stuff, it was basically just me saying, on average, it probably takes me about half an hour to if I look at that issue type, if I know that ticket is about refunds, that's going to be super straightforward. 10 minutes. I'm just passing that to billing. So I was in the position to be able to sort of say, estimated this, and so we got to sort of just the timing. And I believe that at that point in time, the ones that took the longest were the most tricky ones, because you want to cover all your bases. But I wouldn't like say that that's going to be true all the time, because the ticket types change, and they if bugs are introduced, they take longer, or if features are shipped, then that could help. So it is a bit more fluctuating, and I think having something like that little, maybe a drop down to fill in easy, medium, hard would help. It's a little bit more scalable than at each point in time guessing, oh, how long does it take me now versus last month type of thing. So yeah, really like the idea. I think it'll be cool.
Yeah, I mean, there is something to be said also about the subjectivity of a challenge. So for somebody, it might be being with a customer on a call for an hour is a challenge. For somebody else, opening an issue might be a challenge. So that also adds to the complexity. Cool. I'm happy that you approve of it. I think, yeah, we'll be able to do something about it in the near future. It will take time to collect data, of course. We want to create a baseline, but it's the best that we can come up with now.
So moving on to well, 2's already closed, so we're moving on to 3. Hypothesis is focus on PTO over summer and friends and family days have caused lags in performance. Ilya, do we have an update on that?
I mean, I believe we, similarly to what we agreed last week, is that I have not seen any drop in the availability of engineers. So I've ran the numbers as well for August, and we seem to have the same amount of engineers available consistently throughout all the months, being active on the queue. So that doesn't include the new engineers. We have the new spreadsheet that will allow us to monitor kind of these fluctuations potentially in the future, in case that happens on some specific situation. But in general, I don't see that as being an effect. Don't see any data to back it up.
Is there anything that this group thinks we need to just close that out as not supported, or anything else that we need to take a look at? I know for me, there's an action item that Ilya and I talked yesterday. The spreadsheet needs just some work because it's very old and there's many more managers and individuals that aren't actually exposed in the spreadsheet as belonging to, or like, yeah. So I will fix that. But in terms of actual data to gather or things to look at, are we satisfied? Speak up.
I think we're good. I'll also add my spreadsheet with the available engineers also into the issue, so it's also visible there.
In EMEA, we did have a discussion between the LNR folks about how PTO affects the queue. I think what we just saw is that for us, there just wasn't a focus on being aware of who's taking off when. Unless you look at the calendar, which we should just do. We should just be more mindful of, oh, this person is going to be off, so we just need to keep that in mind. So it was less something that we wanted to solve with the process and just something that we wanted to say, heads up, just be aware that people are going to be unavailable. Yeah, for us, we weren't ready to take the next step to say we need a process for this. So that was just interesting.
And I don't think we're not suggesting any process around this yet, just monitoring. But maybe the managers will. It's so hard to be a manager and in this group sometimes because I want to propose process and fix everything, but I'm resisting. I'm my very hardest. Okay, so Ilya, will you close out that issue with a summary comment? Thank you. Number 4, I think, is Wei Ming. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to take us through it?
Yeah. I've gotten this to a point where I'm pretty confident of the hypotheses, but there's actually two different results. There might be a different one for LNR as well. I'll just share my screen here. Yeah. So thanks to Ilya, who I kind of collaborated with last Friday, I believe. Yeah, the data is validated. It tells us what we actually think it does. So that's good. So the hypothesis being our staffing isn't spread appropriately versus the number of tickets that are raised or will breach per hour. I believe in the case of self-managed, that is true to a certain extent, in the sense that yes. So if you kind of look at the average of percentage of breach tickets throughout the last 12 weeks, you can kind of see it's kind of flat. This is pretty low. It's like 5% or below, except for UTC 9, 10, 11, and 12 midnight. So these hours are pretty poor in a sense. And this is looking at all SLAs, including FRT and NRTs. So if you take this result together with the fact that our self-managed KPIs are doing pretty okay, I would say that yes, there are enough hands. They are just not spread, or they are just not activated or not available at the hours which are the roughest, I guess, in terms of queue. If you look at SAS, it's a bit different. So you can see there's a peak at 1 p.m. UTC. Even the lowest point is actually 5%. So the rest of it is actually doing pretty poorly, like 15 here, 37 at 3 a.m., which corresponds to APAC. And I think this is AIMA basically. It's, yeah, 18, 20-ish%. So together with the overall KPIs, not here, which is the overall FRT percent and NRT percent, I think it's fairly clear that in this case, it's not a matter of distribution. There's just something else that is going on. And I think we are already working on that with the other hypotheses. So yeah, I'm fairly confident about these graphs right now. The next step for me would be to work with Ilya and see if we can include this in a, I don't know, forecast or planning dashboard somewhere. Yeah, because there's a few dashboards now, and I think, yeah, instead of creating a new one, let's see where it fits. Any questions about this? Or
So
is my, yeah.
Taking a look at the self-managed, it looked like the hotspot there was the APAC or the Amera APAC handover. Is that right? The UTC.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, it looks that case. Yes.
Okay, and then the hotspot in self-managed, like it was a slow burn, but there was a bit of a spike at the EMEA APAC handover.
Do you mean the SAS?
Sorry, yeah, sorry, on SAS. EMEA Amera. We don't hand over that direction.
Yeah, it's like a slow burn, and then it's a bit rough in the APAC mornings. This area is the APAC mornings. I think this is the time where the folks in India come on. Well, around India, it's not all of them are in India. And then yeah, this is a EMEA spike. This is at 1 p.m. UTC. So I think this graph, as far as SAS is concerned, is pretty useful in terms of figuring out resourcing, I guess, which parts of the day needs further attention, whether that's in terms of hiring or in terms of redistributing existing resources. Whereas, yeah, the self-managed graph would be more useful to identify, is there a way we can mitigate that instead of hiring? Because, yeah, I think overall, in terms of capacity, we're doing okay. It's just that, yeah, there's a hotspot at the AIMA and APAC handover.
Yeah, that's two things kind of spring to my mind, which of course generate hypothesis. But I think at least West Coast Amer has higher location factors. So we haven't been concentrating on hiring there. So we do have a few engineers. But yeah, if we give it that we can't necessarily hire there, then yeah, maybe there is something we can do to organize work better. This is great. This is really, yeah, I would like to look at this every week.
Cool. We actually face the same problem in APAC, which is Eastern APAC, which would be the leading part of the day, yeah, the location factors are higher as well. So there's a bias not to hire there, which I think is resulting in what we are seeing in the earlier part of APAC. So yeah, there is the same issue with Western AMA, I think.
Need to get some volunteers to move to Hawaii or Fiji.
Or work later. But I just want to point out that 1 p.m. UTC is 9 a.m. Eastern. So it's exactly before they log in. And for us, it's like 3 p.m., 4 p.m., depending on the region of the individual. So it's kind of the end of the day. So obviously, we can focus on hiring more in Western Europe and East Europe. But I mean, yeah, it's,
yeah.
If I also look at historic figures, these have always been our challenging kind of breached time zones.
There was actually something else I came across while looking into these charts, which is again, I can't say for sure because I just quickly skimmed through it, but I think it appears that APAC people are morning people for some reason, and then EMEA and AMA people are not morning people. I have no idea why that is, but yeah, take that as an anecdote instead of as a fact right now.
Interesting observation. With data to back it up. That's good.
I wouldn't go so far as there's data to back it up. I just happened to look at it very briefly. I'm not sure if the data really supports it. So I need to validate that that thought.
I do want to point out another small factor involved. So that time of the day is our highest ticket volume, even a bit before that, 1 hour before that. So between, I'm talking in GMT, but it's around the time 1, 2, 3 GMT. That's our most busy hour of the day as well. Yeah, of incoming tickets at least, but assuming that some of them would be starters breaching 24 hours after, or so, yeah, it would increase the load.
Good. Any additional comments on that? All right, moving along, and I do have a hard stop at the top of the hour because it's a support group conversation. Feel free to join, but we'll try and go through the next ones quite quickly. Number 5, adding LNR has drawn resources away from the rest of the queues that haven't been replenished. Donik, I think, what's our status on this one? It felt like we had some resolution, but it hadn't been quite closed out yet.
Yeah, so I just closed it out. The resolution there is that it is somewhat a thing or somewhat proven, but the next step was opening an issue to document the approach to the metric. So I've done that and just marked it as WIP. So I just need to work on that one, but I've closed out the main hypothesis one.
Great, thank you. Number 6, I have no update on. That is me, right? Yes. Number 7 is already closed, and that brings us to the end. Next week, I think we still have a few more to close out, specifically number 6. And Wei-Ming, sorry, we actually didn't on yours. What?
I think we can actually close it out because the further actions are just to sort of integrate those graphs somewhere visible. So I'll figure that one out with Ilya. I'll possibly create an LNR version of that as well, so we can have a look at LNR.
We haven't gotten to our closing or our exit criteria. So let's prioritize that for next week. I'm going to put it top of the agenda. I think we should also be a faster meeting next week because we have fewer hypotheses. We should also talk about next week which additional ones we want to add on now that we've generated more. But let's quickly go through our exit criteria. And I actually have the website up this week. So define conditions under which this workgroup will be reformed. We have not done that yet. Create a dashboard that exposes metrics and targets that will trigger actions on part of the support team. We're doing good on the dashboard and we're adding more. We are not sure about which actions to trigger, so let's think about that for next week. and document common hypotheses and expose the data to support or refute them, I think we can move this one to much higher as the result of our work this week. That's it. Thanks all. See you in a few minutes. Or
Thanks.
right now.
Bye.
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 Bye.